Hi, welcome back to the workshop for the second episode of the Great Guitar Build Off 2021 series. I've been away from this build for a few weeks now, primarily because I've got another build that I'm working on for a customer, but also because there's a lot of other stuff going on in my life right now, having the house renovated, which is eating up quite a lot of my time. But I have managed to free up a little bit of time so we can start to get back onto this build now. So, in the last episode, we'd glued up this behemoth. So this is basically going to be a neck through guitar if you didn't see the first episode. And this is basically the timber for the neck, the headstock and the central section of the body. Now I've weighed this and this weighs 4.5 kilos at present. So around about £9. And that's a good finished weight for a heavy guitar. So clearly we need to do something to reduce this weight a little bit. I do anticipate that it's going to come down once we start trimming away the stuff that we don't need. Now, in the last episode, I spoke about how I didn't really have a definitive plan for this guitar and I'm kind of making it up as I go along. That's not quite so much the case now. I have worked on the plan a little bit and I know better where I'm going, but it is still true to a certain extent. In the first video, I said a number of things that probably weren't true. So we can address those right now. I said the headstock was going to be 17.5 degrees. Not really sure why I said that. I think it's so that the guitar would fit in the rack with my other Gibson style guitars. That's the only reason I can think of. What I'm actually going to do is I'm probably going to do a 10-degree headstock on this. I think that's going to be a much better idea. So for this episode, what I want to do is cut the angle for the top of the headstock. Once I've done that, I can put the route in for the truss rod, cut the body angle out, cut the back of the headstock, and then hopefully be able to do a bit of work on the fretboard as well, get that cut, the fret slots put in and maybe radiused. But before I do any of those things, I just want to have a quick check to make sure that none of this timber has moved in the process of gluing up. So I'm just going to stick my winding sticks on. Now I'm going to check the length of the timber between the nut and the end of the fretboard. The rest of it I'm not quite so bothered about because I'm going to be cutting that away anyway. So if it is kind of slightly out of square, I can address that once I've trimmed it. So with my winding sticks on, I'm just going to eyeball them to make sure that they're square, and they are. Okay, so now we're sure that the neck is straight and not twisted. We can get to marking and cutting out for the headstock angle. And what I'm going to do is I've just marked a few millimeters back from the nut line to where the back of the nut will go. And I'm going to measure back from there 10 degrees. And mark a line in. And just mark that in on both sides. And with that done, I can get it to the bandsaw and get it trimmed off. Okay, so that's the waist bandsawed off the face of the headstock. The bandsaw really struggled with that cut. I think I might be needing a new blade. That doesn't really bode well for trimming the body down, but well, we'll just have to see what we can do. Okay, so next up, it's time to fit the truss rod. Okay, so that's the truss rod installed. All I did was I just set the router up with this little V-bit. So I set the fence on the router so that the V-bit was sat into the scribe line that I've got running down the centre of the blank. So I know then that that is perfectly centred. I then swapped it out for the 6mm bit that I used to cut the channel. Now the only bit that we're left to do now is to drill the access for the Allen key to adjust the truss rod. So first step in that is to just remark our centre line, which we of course lost when we cut away for the headstock angle. Okay, so there's the truss rod access done. It still needs a little bit of cleaning up. I've tried to keep it as small as I possibly can, just to keep as much strength in the headstock as I can. But we can get an Allen key in there and it turns, so that's the main thing. Okay, so next up I'm going to cut the body down to the angle that I need to create the brake angle for the neck. But before I do that, I've just got the drawing out and I've measured the overall length from the nut to where the body ends, because I'm going to remove this bit of waste now before I tackle that cut on the bandsaw, because the bandsaw seriously is struggling at the moment. Okay, so that's as close as I could get it. Really do need a bigger bandsaw. Okay, so to get this marked out, what I'm going to do is I've squared a line across there already. So that's the end of our fingerboard. And I'm just going to square the same line across here. And then I'm going to take my protractor, set it up on that line. And measure down 2.5 degrees. And I'm going to transfer that line across with a marking gauge. And that is the line I'm going to be cutting to. Okay, so that was an absolutely horrible cut to make on the bandsaw. I've got another 2 decent cuts to make, and I'm not entirely sure that the blade's going to last that long, but we'll just have to see. It hasn't cut as close as I would have liked it, so it's actually left me quite a lot of planing to do. Okay, so that's planed level now, and it's cleaned up really nicely. This maple's very nice wood to work. The thing I'm not too sure about is I'm not sure if I'm going to be happy with that as the top face of the guitar. There seems to be like a dark patch there, and there's a splodge, like a mineral streak or something running through there. So that's not brilliant. Not sure I'm happy with that, but we'll see how that goes. Anyway, the next thing we need to do is then get this body down to thickness. So I'm going to make this about 50mm thick. I've got 30mm of mahogany that's going to form the back of the body, and I've got about 20mm of maple for the cap. So that's why I'm going to go with that thickness. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a couple of lines square to the top of the guitar, measure down 50mm, and join the lines up. And with that all marked out, I'm just going to have to bite the bullet now and get it to the bandsaw. Well, that was fun. But there is the body thinned down. A lot of this here will be trimmed away when we do the transition from the body into the neck, but I'm not quite sure what that's going to look like yet. That worked much better. I did a couple of adjustments on the bandsaw and it came off a bit better than the first time, but it was still not brilliant. And I'm still quite away from my line here, so I need to do a little bit of work with the plane, which isn't going to be easy because of course I've got the neck now coming at an angle which might be getting in the way, but we'll see how we go. Okay, so that's thinned down. It's actually went a lot easier than I thought it was going to do. It's a little bit fatter than 50mm, but that just leaves me a little bit of room for finish sanding once we get to that stage. So the next bit that I want to tackle is to get the headstock down to thickness. Once I've done that, I can then start to make kind of a more accurate assessment of how heavy this thing's going to be. And what I'm going to do is when I've taken this off, I'll go away and weigh this again, and we can see how much difference the work we've done so far has made. So I'm going to make my headstock 15mm, but I'm going to just leave it a little bit fat. So I'm going to mark it at 15, about 15.5mm. I'm just going to run a gauge line. Top and bottom, I'm not going to come all the way back on this. I'm going to bring it, I'm going to just take it off level with this block here. And that'll leave me plenty of meat on the neck blank just in case I might want to do a volute or something. I'm not sure on that score just yet. Right, one more time to the bandsaw. I'm going to fast forward right through the fretboard process. This video is going to be very long otherwise, and it's nothing you haven't already seen. Okay, so time to get this all kind of put together now. As promised, I've just been and weighed this. So we started out at 4.5 kilos, which was back crushingly heavy. This is now 2 kilos, so I've lost more than half of the weight. And there's still plenty to come off. The neck is way thicker than it should be. So hopefully we're going to have a reasonable weighing guitar once we've finished. If it is still on the heavy side, I've also got the option of doing some weight relief on the body, perhaps even some chambering. So we're just going to play this one by ear and see how we go. But for now, the next job is to get this repositioned and glued on. And there we have the fretboard glued on. It all seems to have gone down really, really nicely, which is good. Good squeeze out. I've cleaned as much of that off as I can, but it's difficult to get in there, so we'll have to deal with that when we get out the clamps. Okay, so I think that's a really good place to leave this one. I'm happy with the progress I've made in this session. I'm particularly happy that we've managed to get the blank down to something like a reasonable weight now. I was a little bit worried when it was 4.5 kilos, but at 2 I can deal with that. I'm going to leave this in clamps overnight and then carry on working on it tomorrow morning. Hopefully get another video to you very soon. Don't forget, if you've enjoyed this, hit the like button. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.